can start and then people can join in as and when. So, good evening, everyone. And first and foremost, happy World Environment Day. So, we're having this great talk by Madhuri and Vignesh today. And before we get into the talk, for those of you who are new and this is the first time that you are joining our Coexistence and Practice series, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are and what the series is about. Uh, so welcome to our Coexistence and Practice series, and this webinar is hosted by the Coexistence Consortium. So the Coexistence Consortium is a network of conservation researchers and practitioners from diverse disciplines united by the common vision. And this vision is to try and understand the intricate dynamics of coexistence between humans and wildlife. So our mission extends beyond the conservation of just wild animals confined to distant forest pockets. But we also emphasize the importance of living well with nature, even within our immediate surroundings. So, our collective long term vision is to employ an evidence based approach to mobilize the concept of human wildlife coexistence across the globe by focusing and learning from context specific projects. So, you can learn more about us through our social media channels, which Seema will be putting up on the chat. Regarding today's webinar, so the structure of the webinar is that our speakers will be presenting for about 40 to 45 minutes, which will then be followed by a Q&A of about 15 minutes. You can either unmute yourselves because I think we're a small group, or you can put your questions in chat and then we can read those out to the speakers. So about the speakers today, so we have two speakers today. We have Madhuri Ramesh, who is a faculty member at Azim Premji University, Bangalore. She is interested in interdisciplinary research and nature-society relations and teaches in the School of Development. So this talk that she's going to be talking about today actually stems from a collaborative project that she designed with M. Ananda Kumar, who's also part of the Coexistence Consortium and works for the Nature Conservation Foundation. We also have Vignesh Soundararaj, who is also going to be presenting. And Vignesh is a postdoctoral fellow at the Azim Premji University in Bangalore. He has completed his PhD from the National Institute of Advanced Studies in YAS on human bovine relationships amongst nomadic pastoralists in Tamil Nadu. So Madhuri and Vignesh, please, can you take it away?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Seema and Sagrika were just telling me that today has a particularly busy set of events because it happens to be World Environment Day, which we didn't quite realize when we scheduled this talk. But it's nice to see that so many of you could make it. So as Sagrika mentioned, the talk today is sort of a first airing of a project that we had collaboratively developed with Anand Kumar of NCF. And sorry, the chat box. Yeah, we'd like to walk you through our project so far, and we're just kind of tidying up the loose ends, and hopefully there will be a book soon on this project. So we want to talk about this idea of tinkering with care and how care work is integral to what we know about human wildlife relations. So we see that care is actually an extremely common word that crops up in a range of conservation publications, and everybody from hunters to conservationists profess care. But we thought it's worth taking a closer look at this concept and taking some time to unpack what it really means when we use care in the context of coexistence. So in our work, we draw on both indigenous worldviews, which say that human and non-humans are related, they are kin often, even ancestors, and that these are not very separate worlds. We have also drawn quite a bit from the work of the philosopher Mary Midgley, who has written extensively about how humans need interspecies sociality, that we're not just social beings when it comes to other humans, but we're also social beings who need to relate to non-humans. And this is a very important dimension of our lives, and it adds meaning to our lives. So, beyond utilitarian concerns, she says interspecies sociality is a very important part of being human at all. Borrowing from her work, we are bringing the use of the term mixed community to describe these kinds of relations, where you have a place where humans and non-humans feel some sense of connection. They feel some sense of concern and commitment to the idea of well-being. And through the rest of the talk, we will unpack how this care is expressed on both sides, and what are the sort of practices that lead to this. We also found it very useful to look at the scholarship in healthcare studies, where again the idea of care is a very central concept. And from the work of Bernice Fisher and Toronto, who were one of the first to conceptualize this idea of care and care work, we just present their definition here, and you can see that they in fact use a very strong ecological metaphors, right? They say care work is everything that we do to maintain, continue, and repair our world, and the world includes our bodies, our environments. And they recognize this idea of interwoven lives, and that these are not we're not isolated or distinct from the environment and from other beings around us. So if we, pull these different threads together, we can say that care work, or what is often called affective labor in anthropology, is work done that is done to evoke or manage emotions, and also the work that you put in to build, repair, and maintain relations with others. Now, most of this scholarship has obviously talked about relations with other people, but as we mentioned, Mary Midgley brings in this very interesting idea of how building relations and maintaining relations with non-humans is extremely important, and that resonates with a lot of indigenous worldviews as well. The other important, sort of conceptual boundary that we want to set is that care work is not about sentimentality or romanticization. It involves expert knowledge, skills, technology, understanding of legal frameworks, and financial tools as well. So it is a very rational domain. There is a lot of emphasis on practice rather than outcome, because especially if you look at healthcare, invariably most of the people that you care for do die eventually. But it doesn't mean that care work should be judged by that ultimate outcome, but rather by the quality of engagement during the other being's lifetime, right? So good care also involves a lot of tinkering, meaning a lot of tweaking and modifications in response to needs and tensions and the complexity of real world relations that we are dealing with. It can also include moments of rupture, disagreement, frustration, even between the givers of care and the recipients of care. So it's not conceived of in the scholarship, at least, as a sort of sentimental act or just discursive endorsement saying, I care for this or I care for that. But it's how do you translate that intention into action that really matters and decides whether something is a form of good care or it's insufficient or inadequate in some way. Our context is that Anand Kumar, as many of you know, has been working to reduce conflict between humans and elephants in the Valparai Plateau for almost 20 years now. The Valparai Plateau is a very interesting landscape where you have a lot of tea estates interspersed with forest fragments. There are something like 50 odd tea estates in 200 square kilometers of this plateau. It is also surrounded by very large protected areas like the Animalai Tiger Reserve, Parambikulam, Ervikulam, and so on. So this makes it a very important seasonal migration area for elephants. There are close to 120 Asian elephants that crisscross this plateau based on the season. And at least according to the last census, there are almost 70,000 people who live here. So there is a pretty high density of both human inhabitation and elephant presence. The reason that there are a lot of encounters, and some of which go south, is that the pathways that elephants and people use are very similar. The elephants come also into housing lines and inhabited areas in search of food like sugar and rice. And people continue to use forest areas for water, fuel wood, and other kinds of forest products. So because there is no clear spatial separation between the two species, there's obviously a lot of encounters. Some of them are sort of benign or memorable encounters, and some become quite negative, and there is both property damage, loss of human life, and occasionally loss of elephant lives as well. So it was against this background that Anand Kumar and his team stepped in, and they've been working for 20 years. And we'll talk about some aspects of their intervention today, perhaps not all due to constraints of time. The methods we used were that we did 10 months of field work. A lot of it draws on direct observations and some amount of participant observation with the anti-depredation squad of the forest department, as well as with the Nature Conservation Zone Elephant Program team. We used quite a lot of semi-structured and open-ended interviews. Our respondents are broadly of these categories, though it's not an exact number in terms of sample size. We have also, done some amount of discourse analysis based on texts and emails that NCF has written to us and vice versa. We got free prior informed consent from all our respondents. And there were quite a few people who are not very comfortable with having their identities disclosed. So we have created composite characters to maintain their anonymity. Whereas there are others like Anand himself who are very comfortable in, sort of marking their presence there. So in those cases, we've just used their own names. Now I will request my colleague Vignesh to take over and tell you, sketch a bit of these complex relations and what does care mean through the voices of the different people that we have heard in the landscape. Vignesh?
Yeah. In this context, which Madhuri has described now, we will now look at some of the voices of plantation workers. What plantation workers think about fear and hunger. As the slide says, a long-time resident, a resident whose parents also stayed there and she's also staying there right from the childhood, she says, elephant means fear. So by repeatedly encountering elephant every day for years and years, a long-term resident gets completely accustomed to elephant and become completely accepting the movements and behaviors of the elephant without any fear. No, there is always a fear. Even long-time residents in Valparai not only acknowledge the fear on elephant, but also express it. They don't shy away from saying there's no fear. This is what one of the long-time resident told us regarding fear. And the security guard who is working in a plantation estate, as they are called there, described from his point of view a fatal accident, an incident which involved his friend itself. The incident goes like that, in his words. One day, the security guard was standing in his post. In his left, there is a small forest patch. In his right, the tea estate was sprawling. And there is a small mud road goes, and in the mud road, there is a checkpost. That is where his position is, the security guard's position is. One of his friend comes to his post and speaks about his family's on leave today. But they both stay there and speak about some of their issues, their memories and all. And they speak about the elephant also in that time. So that person is asking that two elephants are in the forest patch, isn't it? Did they went outside? The security guard says, no, no, one elephant is still there. Most probably in the evening, that elephant will come out and go to the neighboring hill and just go away to that Kerala side of the Sholaya Dam. And his friend acknowledges, yeah, it is the same elephant which came yesterday, last year also, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. It is the same elephant. It is the elephant which always here, but it might be the elephant which might come from Kerala also. So like that, they keep on discuss about the elephants emergence from the forest patch on that day. And then the friend says goodbye to the security guard and walks towards a water tank, a brick and mortar water tank. He's so obsessed with his own family issues and all, and he's seeing the ground and walking towards the water tank, but the elephant is standing beside the water tank. The security guard has noticed the elephant is standing there and this guy is walking towards it. He is shouting towards his friend. The elephant is standing there, turn back, come this side. He is literally shouting at his friend. But his friend was completely obsessed in his own world and just walked towards the elephant closer and closer and literally bombarded the elephant. The elephant just swung its trunk and the person just splashed inside the brick and mortar water tank and died. This incident, I asked the security guard why this incident happened, why it is happening like that. That person who died had prior information about the elephant. He got the information from the early warning system, as well as that person is the one who is the long time resident who on that very day he spoke about the elephant's presence in the forest patch. It is not about information deficiency or anything. There is enough visibility on that day. That is also not an issue. And he knows every inch of that estate parts, where the water tank is, where the tea estates are going, where the forest patch is. So it is not about the awareness about the landscape also. So why this incident happened, I asked the security guard. The security guard clearly mentioned that person has lost his fear. The fear is something the security guard says human also has some fear about elephant. Elephant also has some fear about humans, and both needs to maintain the balance. That person died because he scared the elephant. He made the elephant to fear, and the elephant got feared, and it swung its trunk, and the person died. So there's an equation of the fear which says that human must have a sort of a balance struck a balance of fear with elephant. Elephant has a fear, human also has a fear. Both needs to manage the balance. The security guard said one more thing very importantly. He said, if all the elephant chases all the humans here, nobody can live here. That means there is already a balance there. People also fear the elephant, and elephant also fears. That's why people are living here. If the balance has been spoiled, people would chase elephant would chase people. We can't live here. What are you asking? He asked me. That made me to think that there is a idea of fear which is very needed, and the fear is little nuanced also. It has an equation that says that both needs to maintain a fear towards each other. And another person who is a labor unionist, a trade unionist, who voices the concern of laborers to the plantation company, he said regarding another incident which was quite famous last year. A German tourist was riding a motorcycle. There was an elephant standing in the middle of the road without heeding any warnings from his fellow drivers who are stationing their vehicle and waiting for the elephant to cross the road. He just moved towards the elephant, and elephant once again just turned back and swung his trunk, and he fall down and died. In this case, the trade unionist is saying that he must have shown his talents to the elephant. That's why he died. What he means by that is there must be fear. You can't show off your talent, you can't show off your ego, your skills, and all that. The fear will guide you. The fear will say what you need to do in that situation. So fear is very important. The trade unionist also says the fear is very important, and antithetical to fear, the trade unionist is saying showing talent, showing who I am. See, elephant, I can ride closer to you. That kind of an ego, you can call it. he's opposing this talents or ego to fear and explaining this thing. And the trade unionist also said a very important thing, and which really made me to think. He said literally said that giving compensation is actually a wrong thing. Always it is the human who doesn't fear anything, who lost the fear, are the one who are dying there. If we preach proper ways to interact with the elephant with fear, there is no need for compensation. Here means compensation for the loss of life due to conflict with wild animals, which the forest department gives. A trade unionist saying this made me really curious to think about what kind of a fear these people are speaking. A long-time resident, a plantation worker, a trade unionist. The way they think about fear made me really think what kind of a role the fear plays in creating a sort of a relationship with the elephant, a sort of a decorum. The fear makes a sort of a etiquette, a decorum, a mutuality, a sort of a restraint it creates according to these voices. And that is why we like to highlight how different ways in which the fear has been taught here. And in continuation of this thing, people speak about hunger also. If an elephant comes and it's all across the world, I believe so. The elephant comes and takes the rice and the sugar, fair price shops, houses, and he takes the rice and sugar and eats it. One of the major theme or flashpoints in which the conflict happens, and the mitigation efforts mostly are guided towards this particular point. In this particular point, tea estate worker, an old woman, was saying, "Let them eat. Let the elephant. It's already started eating. Let them eat my rice and sugar." Imagine how much big the stomach is, how much hard it is searching for the food. She was saying like that. So it is a very important moment to think that elephant is a being with a big stomach compared to me. Elephant is a being which has a hunger like me. The hunger is something which unites people as well as the elephant, which is making the person to say, let the elephant eat my rice, my sugar. I don't care, let it eat. It already started eating. It's in hunger. Let's not chase away, let's not ward off the elephant. Let it eat, and after eating, it will go. For saying this, a conservationist friend told me, for saying this, you need a very big heart. And for saying this, I would say you need a particular ways of disposition of understanding hunger. And this is what the voices of the plantation related people say to us. Can we go to the next slide on this point? Yeah, so in this context of understanding fear and hunger, what can we think about coexistence? Based on what cosmologies people have, they are saying this particular thing about fear and hunger and how it leads them to practice a form of coexistence. We see these kinds of cosmologies are basically a micro practices of care. It sorts of attunes, it sorts of aligns people towards the elephant's presence. I acknowledge the presence of the elephant through fear and hunger. First, you need to acknowledge elephant also is there with me. It's going to be there with me. For acknowledging that, this fear and hunger comes as a rescue. It helps people to acknowledge that first. And then this is not just an acknowledgement, it needs to be practiced in the daily life. So that is what Madhuri was speaking before. It needs a lot of tinkering, it needs a lot of tweaking. So in that context, this is not just an text in the paper. It is not just an ideological level it is operating. It is operating at the everyday mundane level of in a level of a practice. It is operating understanding and practice of fear and hunger, and it needs to be routinely happening every year. It needs to happen, and in that sense only these kinds of an understanding needs to be highlighted. For instance, I will just as a footnote, I will just contrast what is fear from a conservation or a conflict mitigators point of view. Fear is something which is completely antithetical to coexistence practices, because fear makes us to do something very bizarre in front of elephant. For example, there will be some 20-foot pit in front of you. Because of fear of elephant which is coming behind or in front of you, a person will jump and die. There will be a woman sitting safely inside the home. Due to fear of elephant standing outside the home, that woman will just run outside the home and literally go near the elephant. Fear makes us to do things beyond the limits of our body, creates anxiety, and it leads to mostly fatal accidents. So if we cut the fear, we are closer to coexistence. A conservationist, conflict mitigators point of view, I'm saying. Whenever you call a conflict mitigator, the field level conflict mitigator in night, elephant is coming and staying near the elephant is going towards the ration shop. If you say that, the first thing they will do is, don't fear, don't panic, stay quiet, we are always there. This will be the first point they will be saying. And it is absolutely fair. What the logic of fear from their perspective is absolutely fair, and this is what happens. We really do unimaginable things, bizarre things, which will put our lives in serious danger with fear, if we have fear. And similarly, if in the context of hunger, to contrast that with the people's hunger, people think the loss of the rice and sugar, we need to immediately stop. If the elephant, even though it started eating, we need to ward off the elephant. We need to chase the elephant at some cost, so that people will have confidence in conflict mitigators, because they're going to lost their food for the next 1 month. The elephant will completely eat all the rice and sugar. Means what will they do? But the logic of the hunger from the plantation workers' point of view is operating in some other way. It is the hunger which makes them to relate with the elephant in that crucial moment of eating. Seeing the elephant eat, they feel elephant also has a hunger. I too have a hunger. So these kinds of different set of affective acknowledgements and affective vectors, meanings of hunger and fear emerge from the field, and we need to be quite attuned to these things. As part of this project, if you think about where these concerns about fear and hunger are coming from a plantation workers' point of view, we believe that most of the plantation workers, not the recently migrated one, people who are staying there for decades and decades, they always have a memory that their district, they migrated from a district in the plain to the hill station to work in the plantation. They always have a backstory of a famine in the district. It is not a very big famine like a canonical famine which comes in history like a Bengal famine. It is a very small famine before Green Revolution, 50s and 60s we are speaking about. And those generation has transferred that memory to the children even now. We are speaking about 2 to 3 generations. The memory of hunger, starvation, and famine, which pushed them to take up the job in a plantation estate, has been transferred. And they imagine hunger as a part of a life, hunger as a kind of a metaphysics which invokes all the life. Hunger is a big umbrella under which all the lives thrive. uh, there might be multiple ways in which you can understand with non-human life. Elephant also has pain, I also have pain. Elephant also have a intelligent brain, I also have intelligent. Elephant also has a family, I also have a family. But this idea of hunger is a very niche understanding which is historically situated in the lives of the plantation worker. Maybe that is why they are thinking through hunger. Hunger becomes a point of continuum which links them to the elephant. And after coming to the plantation work, we all know there's a sort of a clear supervision based culture which plantation communities and hill station religious evangelism evoke in the hill stations, in the plantation based hill stations. There's strict discipline which is enforced. There's a flock which is created. The flock will subsume to a supervisor, and supervisor will report to higher estate managers, group managers, and all. There is an exchange of fear there. You need to have some fear so that you will be disciplinarily, you will work, and you will earn your wage. This equation comes to their life quite explicitly when they get accustomed to the cultures of the plantation life. So from this understanding of a sort of a pastoral culture, a pastoral fear, come discipline, come care, I think people are thinking about fear and hunger in this way because it is coming very solidly from the plantation workers' lived experiences all these years. In this context, if we want to try to understand how the conflict happens, how the mitigation workers needs to work, how to create awareness regarding coexistence, we need to start from this point of historical awareness, the cultural meanings which are surrounding this hunger and fear. Because coexistence is not something which needs to come from another planet or a separate ways we can coexist with an elephant. It is the way we coexist with our family, coexist with our priest, coexist with our estate manager and supervisor, coexist with our family members. It will be a kind of an extension. The way I coexist with them, people reflect upon elephant like that. So the way in which the muddiness of fear and hunger gets molded by these plantation cultures across the history gets reflected in the way they articulate the relatedness to the elephant. And it is there the coexistence work begins. It never begins in a blank canvas. Coexistence always begins in the historically patchy work of multiple players, multiple affects, and multiple power centers, and hierarchies. So we believe going and understanding the genealogies of fear and hunger will have ways to understand how we care for elephant, how we care ourselves as a community in which elephant is also part of. We will go to the next slide now, Madhuri. Now we have seen the plantation workers' voice. Let us think about the voice of conflict mitigators. Or conflict mitigators are field level workers who work towards creating awareness regarding coexistence of elephant, and they go whenever they get a call, they immediately visit the site, and they stay with the people, and they understand the people, and they care for the ways in which the elephant people can coexist. So that is what we mean by conflict mitigators, field level conservation workers. So the field level conservation workers never say that we are going to solve the problem. We are going to resolve the elephants coming here. We are going to resolve the people's behavior. They always say these phrases, something like we are trying to cushion the blow, we are trying to smoothen the hard edges. It is always like that. Let's do this, let's pull it here, let's come this side, you come that side, let's solve this thing. This kind of a tonality will always be coming from conflict mitigators voice. And then conflict mitigators clearly say, quite explicitly, quite affirmatively, that they do not stand on the side of the elephants or people and speak for anyone. This statement really was very curious to me because I believe how can we act without taking a position in a very general way, not in the context of human wildlife. Generally, if I want to act, if I want to do something, don't I need to take a position? This is my general question. So in that context, this statement made me to think a person is working so hard day and night. He is so much caring for people. He is speaking for the young as well as the old. But he says, I'm not taking any position and speaking for this or that. I can not take position. I cannot speak for people, but still work every day to care for people and the elephant. So in this context, I was thinking, what is the basis of mitigation? Basis of mitigation is fundamentally about elephants and people can live in the same place. Elephant doesn't need to be translocated. People doesn't need to be pushed away from the land. Both can live in the same place. That is the modus operandi. That is the ontological basis of mitigation. In this basis, what kind of a position the mitigators inhabit? From this, if you accept this basis, not just for the in a sake of a diplomatic stand, practically you need to accept it and do it. You can after accepting it, you need to practice it every day. So in that force of practice, what kind of a position the mitigators inhabit was very curious to me. So in that context, what we are trying to think about the work of mitigation is the mitigators first taught their position by identifying separately the elephants and people. Based on the appearance and behaviors, they will identify individual elephant, the herd, and the movement where they goes near the river stream or near the hill, near the workers' lane, and they will identify individual people in estates also. Which person is moving in the dawn and dusk? Which person is dealing with rice and sugar more? Which person is taking a shortcut instead of taking the main road? Which person is always moving closer to the forest patch, etc., etc. And then they interpolate both the behaviors repeatedly, and they try to predict if this happens, what will happen next. So let me explain this further. For example, from the vision, from the eyes of a conflict mitigator, if a mitigator sees a truckload of a sugarcane truck going up in the hill, the mitigator will think immediately, okay, at the 28th hairpin bend, that elephant herd is going to cross the road. This person is in now third bend. If they go there, what will happen? Immediately his mind will think like that. If a weed like a lantana grows, if that elephant herd is going to move, used to move in this way, if this weed grows, it will go that side. So there's a workers lane. That workers lane, people don't have good history of interaction with the elephant. So what will happen? There's nothing called a single isolated event or a behavior for a mitigator. Mitigator always interpolates, always links one behavior to another. If a mitigator sees a loudspeaker for a festival, immediately he thinks how much distance this loudspeaker will move the elephant. If the elephant moves that side, how it is going to come back to its own path. If after moving there, who is staying there, which workers lane is staying there, which bungalows are there. So a simple object, a simple event, a simple human behavior, or even the elephant behavior, like herd dividing and joining with another herd, the fusion and fission of herd, will make the mitigator to think immediately in terms of what will happen to the people in that place. How across time and space this particular behavior will reflect there. And every behavior becomes a mutuality, and it is a perpetual mutuality. The mitigator keeps on worries day and night every season. If this happens, what will happen next? If that happens, it might or might not happen. So how can I alert the people? How can I create awareness regarding this thing? I believe this moment of keep on reflecting, interpolating, keep on worrying between one behavior and another behavior is what exactly working in between means, is what not taking a stand means. A mitigator cannot stand in the side of elephants only to think like this. A mitigator cannot stand only in the side of the people to think like this. He needs to not take a position to see everything in the place happening in a quite interpolated, messy way, which no human, not just mitigator, can completely predict, obviously. Which behavior is leading to conflict, which behavior will interact with another behavior of a human, what will happen? Absolute prediction is not possible. But you need to care, you need to worry, you need to keep on think about those interactions between one behavior to another behavior to another behavior. Keep on getting confused and worrying about that wretched mutuality is what we think not taking the side of elephants and people all about. And this is what we believe the exact work of being in between elephant and people is all about. And from this point, I think we can think about care also. I think at this point, Madhuri will take over. Yeah, Madhuri. Hello, Madhuri. Hello?
I don't know whether Madhuri can hear us. Madhuri, you're on mute if you're trying to say something. Not sure what's happening here.
Yeah, she's there.
Sorry, my internet fluctuated, so I lost Vignesh's voice for a few minutes.
Yeah, proceed, Madhuri.
Right, thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think you would have heard Vignesh sketch some of the moments of affect and the kind of affective responses people have to the presence of elephants. And these are the kinds of moments of empathy, understanding, and sort of emotional connection that helps people build relations with elephants beyond sort of awareness programs and what they can achieve. And this is what translates also into what Vignesh mentioned earlier as the micro practices of care. So we're just in the process of, finishing a book on this in the public anthropology style. So we're happy to take questions and comments. And before we close, I would like to also briefly mention people who have really helped us pull this study together. Anand Kumar and his team at NCF, of course, for being so open and for this generous invitation to come and look at what they're doing and how people understand the presence of elephants. We also want to thank the anti-depredation squad and other officials of the Tamil Nadu Forest Department. A lot of people in the tea plantation companies who were actually very forthcoming. Ovia Jeshima, who worked with us for a couple of months to help with some of the field work. Sagarika, who ran a very useful workshop on how to conduct interviews about conservation conflict and how to deal with strong, effective responses even when people are narrating their experiences and encounters with elephants. Colleagues at APU and of course at the consortium for the very interesting conversations we've had that has kind of helped Vignesh and me think through some of these aspects. This project was supported by a research center grant from APU, and that has really helped us pull this work together. We're happy to take questions because we have deliberately not gone into too many details about methodology and other things so that there is scope for all of us to discuss this further. So please feel free to ask or comment on what we have presented so far.
Thanks, Madhuri. So maybe we can start off by sort of ask some questions from the audience. And if you have anything that you would like to kind of discuss and to kind of share about the project as well, that is something that we can do. So if you'd like to maybe unmute yourself and ask Madhuri and Vignesh a question, or you can also put it on the chat and then we can read it out to them. Yeah. So we have a first question from Dee. Yeah, go ahead, Dee.
Hi, Madhuri and Vignesh. Really interesting work that you're doing. Incidentally, I'm in Himachal Pradesh right now, and I'm writing a paper on fear in human-wildlife interactions. And very similar things are coming up here as well. So I wanted to share about that because, like, people here are saying, "Jaan to sabko pyara hai," in the context of fear, like when asked. So even people who are living out in the jungle, migratory shepherds, are, always saying that, yeah, of course we feel fear. And the animal feels fear too. And that balance between the fears between different bodies and species is what keeps things together. So that's super interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading the book. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Suganya, and then after that, Chandrima.
Yeah. Hi, Madhuri, and hi, Vignesh. Thank you. I was wondering if you paid attention to gender at play because you're talking about care work and work being interviewing with respondents as well as the ADS squad of the forest department. Like, did you see, did did at any time gender played a role in people's understanding and reflections and perceptions of some of these?
Yeah, Madhuri.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to log in with my phone because I'm having an audio problem. Dee, I heard the first part of your comment on fear. Vignesh, could you just tell me quickly what the her question was?
No, the fear question. Dee doesn't have a question. She wants to share her experience from
Ah,
Himachal to us. But there
right.
is a second questioner.
Yeah, Sukanya's question on gender, right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Sukanya, I think Vignesh can also chip in here. The thing was, we didn't pay explicit attention to gender. We wanted to, but what happened was that the women were particularly shy about talking. So the only women who spoke to us were the Tamil and the Malayalam plantation workers who have already been there for a couple of generations. But what is happening in Valparai now is that there's this huge influx of migrant workers from Jharkhand, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Hindi speaking. And a couple of the last years, most of the negative encounters with not just elephants, with leopards, bears, and other things has been within that group.
Mm,
And it was very difficult for us to get them to open up and speak to us. So I'm afraid that is a blind spot in our study. We weren't able to pay as much specific attention to gendered relations as we wanted to.
okay.
But we are aware of Rana's here. I think Rana and Science work on gender dimensions of these interactions. We are aware of it, but we unfortunately couldn't do much within our study span.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I found your comment very interesting because I think, yeah, like Vignesh said earlier, fear is something that in conservation we have always looked at it from the perspective of this needs to be eradicated through awareness programs or, more interaction with the communities. But it's interesting that communities in different parts of the country are kind of saying fear has a certain regulatory role to play in the way we respond to animals, that it's necessary to create a sense of mutual respect and establish a sort of decorum of interaction. And a lot of people like motorists on the roads, the bus drivers, they all pointed to how fear was important because it kept both the elephants well behaved and also prevented people from taking liberties with the elephants, which is what that comment on, you shouldn't show your talent to an elephant was about. Yeah, so that was something we found quite interesting. And I don't think this relation of fear and how it translates into certain forms of practices of care, there's much about it in the literature yet. So hopefully you'll also write up your findings soon.
Yeah, Chandrima.
Yeah, hi, Madhuri and Vignesh. Nice talk. I wanted to understand when you say mitigator, what exactly do you mean? Because when you were talking about how the relationship between people and elephant should be the mitigator, like who is the mitigator here? Are these the local residents themselves to some extent, or is it the squad from the forest department? Like who is the mitigator particularly in this case?
Mitigators are
Vignesh can take that.
yeah, yeah. Mitigators officially are two people. One is anti-depredation squad from Tamil Nadu Forest Department.
Okay.
as well as the field workers of Nature Conservation Foundation, NGO working on human-elephant coexistence practices.
Okay.
So they are employed specifically for the purpose of reducing the conflict, mitigating the conflict, managing the conflict. So differentiate them to focus their work specifically. I believed instead of calling them as a conservationist, conflict mitigators will fine tune them much more. And we are
So,
thinking what kind of an exact term is very clear. In my first notes, field notes, which I shared with Madhuri also, I think Madhuri also asked the same question. Do we need to call them mitigators or conservationists?
mm.
I
So,
believe mitigator gives a sort of a verbal quality. So put it very bluntly, I felt their job is very action based. So I want to create an action. I felt mitigator would be a new term. So that is why we are trying to think more about that. Yeah, you are trying to say something.
yeah, I just wanted to know that in this context, when you
Uh,
say as a mitigator, so what are the things that a person who is in this role
mm,
has to do on a daily basis?
the mitigator mostly takes his bike and goes and watches people and elephant. This is his primary basis of his everyday life.
Okay.
And based on his observation, he predicts that evening, 6 o'clock, this elephant might move in this direction, and people are working in that field number 10. So he needs to alert the people that elephant is going to come. This is the second stage. And in night, people themselves call that elephant is near us, so come. That person
Okay.
must go there and take care of the any untoward incident must not happen. He needs to do something in that moment. So these are all the basic things mitigated as.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that Chandrima, the key difference here that we want to highlight is that mitigators are people who are committed to the practice of enabling coexistence. So not necessarily people who are writing about the problem or
Mm.
trying to shift policy, but people who are working on the ground to manage this interspecies
Okay.
relation and develop that sense of sociality. So they are
Okay.
defined by that strong practice orientation.
Okay. 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 Thanks.
Um, I think Sukanya also that Rana has put up a chapter on the chat. So if anybody else would also like to read about the gendered perspective, that is something that's available on the chat as well. So I actually had a question, Vignesh, and I think the second incident that you were talking about, where about the security guard and the other person who actually kind of went towards the elephant, and that's when this incident sort of happened. I was also thinking, in such landscapes where there is continuous sort of interaction with elephants, and there are continuous incidents that are being reported about elephant attacks or kind of conflicts with elephants. Did you ever find that there was also possibly maybe some sort of desensitization that kind of also happened? Because I think my understanding of fear is that, when you experience a situation, there is fear, and then that kind of kind of sort of takes your behaviors kind of in response to that emotional response. But through kind of repetitive exposures of incidents, is there also like a desensitization that people might be experiencing with regard to fear? And even in terms of, let's say, for example, like, if you do tell people that, okay, there are elephants here in this particular village or in this particular location, people maybe in some ways become, I wouldn't say careless, I don't know what the word for it is, but they are like, okay, yes, we've had elephants here in the past. I've never encountered them. People haven't seen them. So there is, in some ways, they almost kind of take it for granted in some ways that they are not going to have an interaction with elephants. And does that then kind of have an impact on fear responses or even in terms of influencing their behaviors in some ways?
Yeah, the main point, I believe, the people, particularly the security guard, says is the fear is the one which keeps you sensitized. If you have fear, you will not get desensitized. That is what he means. So there is nothing called, according to their understanding, a repetition. The elephant every year comes, every time it crosses the same road, every time the jackfruit tree it goes. So there is keep on, these events are repeating in itself if you see from an objective point of view. But in the landscape of fear, every moment you encounter an elephant is a new thing. So that is what their understanding of fear. So if it is not a new thing, you lost fear. So it might seem little tautological, but that is what they are trying to say. You need to have fear to have a sensitive understanding, to be in that moment every time as a new person, to learn something, exactly practice something, sort of a decorum or etiquette there. And in the context of the word desensitization, I would like to say that people use this, they don't use the exact English word, but something like that they use for the tourist. The tourist is the one who is new. The tourist doesn't know where the elephant is. Tourist comes to see the elephant. But people believe they are the one, as you said, desensitized towards and going and seeing the elephant closer by. Why they are doing that? Because they don't have fear. So the relation between being sensitive or desensitized with the context of fear is not repetition, it's not long termness. The new people are the one who are doing this thing, and the reason they are giving is the idea of fear, which will guide you to be sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, what like Vignesh pointed out, what came out strongly was that people felt fear makes them more attuned, more sensitive to elephant presence. It helps them distinguish between one irritable elephant versus another calm elephant, to really pay attention to the nuances of elephant presence. And too much of fear was also a problem, as Vignesh sketched from the mitigator's point of view. So there's actually quite a nuanced understanding of fear. They're not saying it is presence or absence, but they're saying a certain degree, not too little, not too much. And it's that delicate balance that people seem to feel actually supports coexistence.
Yeah, Sagnik?
Yes. Thank you so much for the talk. It's quite interesting. Just would like to draw a parallel between, intergroup emotions, how they operate between humans itself, and somehow it's mapping onto human-elephant interactions as well. Fear as an emotion often reduces the contact between a human in-group and an out-group. Similarly, it seems to be the case that the locals, especially who are worried about the tourists, are it limiting their kind of contact with the elephant in some manner. But it's quite interesting. Is it that fear kind of regulates the locals' attention such that they pay more attention to the elephant itself? To the types of elephants, as Madhuri ma'am had just mentioned, some elephants are more calm than the others, some are more irritable naturally. And so, what is the basic reason for this fear in the first place? Is it due to these incidents with the tourists or other reasons? Of course, we know that elephants themselves are very powerful creatures. So, is that simply the reason?
uh,
I think that's a sorry. Go ahead, Vignesh.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I believe the idiosyncrasies of the elephant will come much more beautifully when you have the fear. The fear will not flatten this thing, because the fear is much more nuanced. It is not about on-off switch or black and white. Fear operates in that gray area. And then there is a second part of the question which says where the fear is coming from. That is a very important question. We are still searching for that. I believe it is coming from the idea of we need to create a constellation around the fear to understand what the fear is. That is what we are trying to understand. The idea of supervision, the idea of discipline, the idea of care itself can make us to understand fear in a much more important way. The how you work in a plantation, how you worship your God, how you relate with your teacher, your priest. From that genealogies, I believe we can get much more closer to fear, where the fear is coming from. Yeah, Mother, you can go.
I'm just going to connect Sagnik's question to Ursula and Madhusudan's comment in the chat box. See, I think there's also a huge element of personality differences, even in the case of elephants. Because, for instance, Ursula, there's this fantastic tusker that Anand likes to talk about called Bhima in Hassan. He's this huge single male elephant, so you would expect that he would be more aggressive, less tolerant of people's presence. But he's actually like a celebrity. Every time he walks through the village roads, there are literally hundreds of young people, especially young men, who seem to follow Bhima around, and they're, shouting and trying to capture videos on their phones. And Bhima's super calm through all of this. So clearly, this slotting through biological categories doesn't really explain much. And as many biologists have been saying now, we need some understanding of elephant personalities as well to kind of parse this question of why do certain elephants react very strongly to human presence, whereas others seem more chilled out, so to speak. We still don't know. I think that needs much deeper ethnography work. Similarly, Sagnik, to the question you asked, I think we would have to have much better long-term understanding of elephant personalities. And cultural adaptation, Madhu, yeah, even here there are such personality differences. So there's this other famous elephant that I'm sure you know, Madhu, called Monica, who used to hang around Valparai, right? Quite a very well-known matriarch. So she is known to have, chased people who have waved flaming torches and even, thrown sand on the torches and stepped on them to show, I'm not scared and I'm still going to walk the path I want to walk. So people really remember her as a very bold elephant. But the same elephant was super scared of these flickering fairy lights. So there was a compounder's house her troop used to constantly go and pull down. And finally, Anand and Ganesh suggested they string these fairy lights across the building, and that worked. It kept Monica's herd away. So there are just such fine-grained differences in how different herds and different elephants respond and seem to express fear of very specific things. It's really fascinating. We are clearly dealing with personalities and not just sort of animals in the aggregate. Dulcie's question on blame, not really. We didn't find, much of this concept of blame coming up. People spoke much more about responsibility, mutual care. They also pointed out how elephants are adjusting their behavior to the presence of people. A simple example, an old lady told us how elephants used to walk behind her housing line for quite some years, but once they started stringing clothesline across, the elephants realized that they would get caught and it would also create a ruckus every time they walk past and they pull the lines down, so they stopped doing that. So it seems like people are paying much more attention to mutual adjustments rather than trying to assign blame. At least that's what we found. um, yeah, Lakshmana, please go ahead.
Oh, hello, Madhuri, and hello, Vignesh. So, very great talk. It's actually, I could relate a lot of that with the elephants. I've also been working with for my thesis in North Andhra, the paddy elephants of Parvatipuram. So, I've been seeing all these relational personalities as well. And the fact about fear is something one of our senior trackers of the elephants mentioned about if you pamper the elephants too much, they will lose all their fear and they will get even bolder with humans. But if you keep them in a little amount of fear, they will learn to respect you as well. So it's like I had related all the field experiences with this talk. And also, yeah, coming to personalities, there were also like similar stories with the individual elephants here in Parvatipuram, like including a solitary bull who used to be there until like 3 years ago. And when he was there, he was the only one among the herd who used to come inside the villages and houses, and he became like a quite celebrity, known for many behaviors as well. So after he left, the people locals say like they have become so used to the herd's presence, and the herd has become calmer. There are also like many vernacular ethologies that the trackers share as well about him being able to learn, especially of co-adaptation. People learning to adapt to live with elephants, and elephants learning to live with elephants. It's like I'm seeing a natural experiment happening right in front of us, especially because since this is a place where elephants had not been there for over 200 years. So also coming to that, when you interviewed communities in Valparai, had there been people who had come from other places that did not have elephants, and now when they're here living with the elephants, how are they learning to live with them?
Um, the very old migration, people who came from within Tamil Nadu, they came, their grandparents came in 50s, 60s, and they are still living. We don't know how, when they first came, what they encountered, because they would most probably would not have encountered an elephant in their native place, which is agrarian plateau. Most probably they will not. But the recent migration which is happening now is mostly happening from Jharkhand, Assam. There are some interviews which we conducted in which, halfway through the interview, people said, my house was in Kaziranga National Park. My house, elephant used to come. Many Jharkhand people told. You can have a prior meeting or a prior acquaintances or exposure to elephant from your native place also, but still the way you behave here needs to be fine-tuned. This is what many field level conflict mitigators used to say. You might have been accustomed to an elephant before or not. That is not a question. After coming here, you need to do so and so things. So what they are trying to say here is that prior experience becomes a twin-edged knife here. My house is in Kaziranga. I know everything about elephant. I know that elephant used to just come near me and rub its skin and walk through me. So here also I would be same. No, you can't be. So they create that awareness from point zero. You come here, you don't know about the elephant, whether you know or not doesn't matter. Let's start speaking now. Let's start speaking from point zero, in which the prior experiences cannot be taken for granted regarding your knowledge or ignorance towards elephant. So this kind of practice or awareness creation I have seen.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah. So I think thanks so much, Vignesh and Madhuri. I think that was a very, very interesting discussion about fear, and also this question about hunger as well, Vignesh, that you brought up as well, and how fear in some ways sort of directs or could have the potential to govern coexistence. And, if there is a healthy fear on both sides, both from the humans as well as the elephants, in some ways that kind of creates patterns of behavior and interaction with each other, and which could then therefore sort of influence coexistence. So thanks so much for that very, very interesting talk. And yeah, and thanks everyone for joining in and sticking on. And the talk will be put up on YouTube. So in case you have missed some bits of it and want to kind of go through it again, it'll be up on our Coexistence Consortium YouTube channel. So thanks everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, Sagarika.